Hello, folks. This is Risk, the show where people tell true stories they never thought they'd dare to share. I'm Kevin Allison, and this is another one of our Risk Reacts video episodes, a new format for us. It's a little bit like those music reaction videos that you see on YouTube where someone's listening to a song and reacting to it for the first time. But here it's not songs, it's stories. Now, if you're hearing this on our audio podcast feed, just know that there's a link to the video version on YouTube in the show notes. But just hearing it will be fun too. You and I will listen to a story for the first time together, and I'll share my thoughts immediately afterwards. But if you're watching the video version of this, make sure to check out our audio podcast, Risk, where people have been sharing jaw-dropping, boldly told true stories for over 15 years. There's over 2,100 stories waiting for you on Risk, wherever you get your audio podcasts, or at risk-show.com. So one of our producers, Taj Easton, is a huge fan of the podcast Love and Radio, and he's been trying to get me to listen to a certain episode of Love and Radio for the longest time. And when he heard that we were going to run this one on Risk Reacts, he sent me this phone message, so I'm going to listen to this for the first time also. Let's see what Taj has to say.
Dude, John told me you're going to listen to the Silver Dollar. I cannot wait to hear what you think about this, Kevin. This is literally the only story I can think of that legitimately changed my worldview. It, affected my trajectory in life. I'm super excited to talk to you about it, so call me after, man. Also, there is a very bad word in here, Kevin. I'll give you a hint. It's a very, 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 very bad word. Awful word. All right? Call me when you finish, man. I want to hear what you think.
Okay. Taj is very passionate about stories and has worked on a ton of stories, so if it meant that much to him, I'm really looking forward to this. So yeah, as you know, I've never heard this before, but what I do know is that it's called the Silver Dollar and that we're going to hear a somewhat abridged version of it just to keep it under 20 minutes. So without further ado, let's you and me have a listen.
Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown. I set out to get you.
In 1983, country music had made a resurgence in this country. So I joined a country band. I was the only black guy in the band, and consequently, usually the only black guy in many of the places where we played. Well, there was this truck stop in a place called Frederick, Maryland. Truck stop had a restaurant and had a motel. In the bottom of the motel was this lounge called the Silver Dollar Lounge. And it was basically an all-white lounge. Black people did not go in there. Well, here I was in the Silver Dollar Lounge. And first time I played there, I came off the bandstand after the first set, and I was walking across the dance floor to sit with some of my bandmates. And this white gentleman, probably in his mid to late 40s, gets up from his table and walks across the bandstand from behind, puts his arm around my shoulder. And I stopped and turned around, looked to see who was touching me. And he says, I really like your all's music. This is the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. I had no idea where this guy was coming from. And I naively and innocently asked him, where did you think Jerry Lee Lewis learned how to play? What are you talking about? Well, Jerry Lee learned how to play that style from black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. That's where rockabilly and rock and roll came from. Oh, no. Jerry Lee invented that. I never heard no black man play like that until you. I know Jerry Lee Lewis personally. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him since I was 13 years old. He's told me himself where he learned how to play. Well, the guy didn't buy it. But he was fascinated with me, and he wanted to buy me a drink. Now, I don't drink, but I agreed to go back to his table and have a cranberry juice. He says, you know, this is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a black man. I asked him, I said, why? And he didn't answer me. He stared at the tabletop. And his buddy elbowed him in the ribs and said, tell him. Now he says, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I started laughing. Okay, this guy thinks I'm jerking him around about Jerry Lee Lewis, so he's going to jerk me around about the Klan. While I'm laughing, he goes inside his pocket, pulls out his wallet, and hands me his Klan card. His looked like it had a Klansman on horseback, and then on the other side was this red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center, which is the Ku Klux Klan insignia. It's called a Mayoke, or a blood drop emblem. I stopped laughing because I recognize that stuff. This is for real. What the hell am I doing sitting at a table with a Klansman? I gave him back his card, and we talked about some other things. The guy gave me his phone number. He wanted me to call him anytime I was to come back to this bar with this band, because he wanted to bring his buddies, right? His Klan buddies, to see this black guy play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. We were on a rotation at that club every 6 weeks, with other bands. So I'd call the guy like on a Wednesday or Thursday and say, hey man, I'm going to be at the Silver Dollar, come on out. He'd come, and he'd bring his Klansmen and Klanswomen friends, and they'd gather around and watch me play. They'd get out on the dance floor and dance. There were some who didn't want to meet me, they were kind of standoffish, just like, watch me from afar, but I knew it was them. Others, were curious and wanted to, they shook my hand and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, this went on about every 6 weeks until the end of '83, at which time I quit the Klan. I quit the Klan. I quit the band. Get that right. Freudian slip there. Okay. I quit the band and I went back to playing rock and roll and blues and, whatever genre was popular in '84. And so, I lost contact with the guy.
I think it's wrong to mix races. You say the Klan preaches and thrives on violence.
This particular shirt here was given to me by a Klanswoman who wore it. It depicts a caricature of Martin Luther King with the crosshairs, the bullseye targeted on his forehead, and it mocks his I Have a Dream speech. And it says, our dream came true.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It's hard not to have a visceral reaction to it.
Yeah. It's pretty despicable. But this is what we're dealing with. This is our country, man. So you wonder why I do what I do? I'm not going to ignore it. There are those out there who will talk the talk, but I'll walk the walk.
Did your family or friends ever go, Daryl, you can't be doing this. Like, you're going to get yourself killed.
Well, yeah, everybody did. But I had this need to do it. I want an answer to my question. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? So, I'm going to interview all these racists. I need to write a book. So I chose the Klan. Because, man, I could have chose, the Nazis, but I had made some kind of relationship with this Klansman. So I'm going to track down that Klansman from the Silver Dollar Lounge. He had moved. He did not have a phone, but he had an address. So unannounced, I went by his apartment one evening, okay? I knock on the door, right, in this hallway, and he opens the door. He says, Daryl, what are you doing here? And he steps out into the hallway and looks up and down the hallway to see if I brought anybody with me, right? Well, when he stepped out of his apartment, I stepped in. So he turns around, he comes back in. He goes, what's going on, man? Are you still playing? What's going on? Yeah, I'm still playing, man. But listen, I need to talk to you about the Klan. The Klan? Yeah, you remember, right? Well, I was. So he said he'd quit, and he went into this long story. Well, I said, where's all your Klan stuff? And he says, well, they came and got it. Apparently, he had not paid off his robe and hood, and they came and repoed it. And I said, do you know Roger Kelly? Yeah, I know Roger. Roger was my Grand Dragon. In Klan terminology, they called the state leader the Grand Dragon. I asked him to hook me up with the Grand Dragon. And he said, no, he couldn't do that. And I said, but wait a minute, you're out of the Klan now. He goes, it doesn't matter, Daryl. Well, I begged and pleaded with him to give me Mr. Kelly's information. Well, 20 minutes later, he finally consented on the condition that I not reveal where I got his home address and his home phone number. He warned me. He said, Daryl, do not go to Roger Kelly's house. Roger Kelly will kill you. I called my secretary who books my band. Mary worked here out of my house. I had Roger Kelly's phone number. I gave it to her Monday morning when she came down. I said, here, give Roger Kelly a call and tell him you're working for somebody who's writing a book on the Klan. Would he consent to sitting down and being interviewed? Do not tell Mr. Kelly that I'm black, unless he asks. If he asks, don't lie to him, but don't allude to it. Don't give him any reason to ask. And so I had her call, and he agreed. So we set up the meeting for the motel right above the Silver Dollar Lounge, and at 5:15 on a Sunday afternoon. Mary and I got there early. I gave Mary some money, and I sent her down the hall to get some soda and put it in the ice bucket so I would be able to offer my guests a beverage. I had no idea what this man was going to do when he saw me. Was he going to freak and attack me because I'm black? Was he going to say, I'm not talking to you, and turn around and leave? Or was he going to come in and be interviewed like he had agreed to do? Right on time, knock, knock, knock on the door. Mary hops up, runs around the corner, and opens the door. In walks the Grand Nighthawk. Nighthawk in Klan terminology means bodyguard. He's wearing military camouflage fatigues, the Ku Klux Klan insignia, and on his right hip, he had a gun. I was not armed. My secretary was not armed. Mr. Kelly is walking directly behind this guy in a dark blue suit. The Nighthawk turns the corner, and upon seeing me, he freezes instantly. Mr. Kelly bumped into his back, and they stumbled around, trying to regain their balance, looking all over the room like, something's wrong here. I get up and I walk over. I said, hi, Mr. Kelly. Put my hand out. My name is Daryl Davis. He shook my hand. So far, so good. I said, come on in, come on in. The Nighthawk shook my hand. Mr. Kelly sat down. I'm like, yes, he's going to do it. And the Nighthawk stood at attention to his right. Right before I could sit down, Mr. Kelly says to me, Mr. Davis, do you have any form of identification? Yes. And I reached into my wallet and pulled out my driver's license and gave it to him. And he says, oh, you live on Flack Street in Silver Spring. Why is this man reciting my street address? Well, now, that had me a little concerned. But I didn't want to let him know that he had slightly unnerved me or rattled me. But I wanted to let him know that, don't screw around. So I said, yes, Mr. Kelly, that is where I live. And you live at, and I named his house number and his street. We started doing the interview. And everything, was going along smooth. I mean, every now and then somebody might pound the table with their fists to make a point. Every time Mr. Kelly would say, well, Mr. Davis, the Bible says, I'd reach down into my bag and pull out the Bible and hand it to him to show me where it said blacks and whites had to be separate. Or if my cassette ran out of tape, I'd reach down into the bag and pull out my cassette and refresh the recorder. Every time I reached down, the Nighthawk would reach up to his gun. A little over an hour into this interview, there was a strange noise, kind of like... I immediately jumped up out of my chair and slammed my hands on the table. My mind was racing like 90 miles an hour, trying to think, what did I just say? What did I just do to cause him to go off and make some weird noise? And all I could hear in the back of my head was that former Klansman saying, Daryl, do not fool with Roger Kelly. Roger Kelly will kill you. And I'm getting ready to come across that table, grab the Nighthawk and Mr. Kelly, and slam them both down to the ground and disarm the Nighthawk. My eyes locked with Roger Kelly's eyes. My eyes were clearly saying, what did you just do? And I could read his eyes. What did you just do? And the Nighthawk had his hand on his gun, looking back and forth between both of us, like, what did either one of y'all just do? Mary, she was over here sitting on top of the dresser. She realized what happened. And then it made that same noise again. Some of the ice cubes in the ice container melted, the ice bucket melted, and the cans of soda shifted. We all began laughing at how ignorant we were. We continued with the interview, and there were no more problems. At the end, I shook their hands and thanked them for their time, and Mr. Kelly gave me one of his Klan cards. And he said, keep in touch. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't say it, but I was thinking to myself, what? I didn't come here to make friends with the Klan. I came here to find out, how can you hate me when you don't know me? And he didn't like me. He told me as much. On the way back home, I said to Mary in my car, I said, I rather like Roger Kelly. I like him as a person. I do not like what Roger Kelly stands for. But I found that we had more in common than we did in contrast. Basically what we had in contrast was how we each felt about race. Other than that, we agreed on a lot of things in common. We need to get drugs off the street. We need better education for kids. Things like that, we can agree upon. So I said to her, you know what? I will keep in contact with the guy. So whenever I had a gig up in his county, I'd call him and say, hey man, I'm playing here or playing there. Come on out. He'd come. He'd bring the Nighthawk with him, but he'd come, right? Sometimes I would invite him down here. He'd come down here. He'd sit right over there on the couch. And I'd sit over here in this chair. And we would talk. He'd bring the Nighthawk. The Nighthawk would sit next to him. Sometimes the Nighthawk would twirl his gun on his finger because he's, bored while Mr. Kelly and I talked. Sometimes I would invite over some of my Jewish friends, some of my black friends, some of my other white friends, just to engage Mr. Kelly in conversation with somebody other than me. I didn't want him to think that I was some exception. I wanted him to talk to other people. After a while, he began coming down here by himself. No Nighthawk. He trusted me that much. After a couple years, he became Imperial Wizard, national leader, Imperial Wizard. He began inviting me to his house.
Welcome to this final hour of CNN Sunday Morning. I'm Bob Kane, and today for Miles O'Brien.
Good morning to you all. I'm Joey Chen.
Friendship can transcend all kinds of boundaries.
Just look at us. And two men in Washington area are showing that even an African-American man and a member of the Ku Klux Klan can find common ground. CNN's Carl Rochelle reports.
Davis is one of the few African-Americans you will ever find attending a KKK rally. More than attending, he is welcome.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there. We get to know one another and we do different things, it hasn't changed my views about the Klan, because my views on the Klan's been pretty much cemented in my mind for years. And I believe in separation of the races. I believe that's in the best interest of all races. I will follow that man to hell and back because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I'll respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy.
He said that he respected me, the Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. He said, we may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. The most important thing that I learned was that while you are actively learning about someone else, you are passively teaching them about yourself. All right? So if you have an adversary, an opponent with an opposing point of view, give that person a platform. Allow them to air that point of view, regardless of how extreme it may be. And believe me, I've heard some things so extreme at these rallies, it'll cut you to the bone. Give them a platform. You challenge them, but you don't challenge them rudely or violently. You do it politely and intelligently. And when you do things that way, chances are they will reciprocate and give you a platform. So he and I would sit down and listen to one another over a period of time. That cement that he talked about that held his ideas together began to get cracks in it. And then it began to crumble. And then it fell apart. And then a few years ago, Roger Kelly quit the Ku Klux Klan. He no longer believes today what he said on that videotape. Okay? And when he quit the Klan, he gave me his robe and hood. This is the robe of the Imperial Wizard. When the 3 Klan leaders here in Maryland, Roger Kelly, Robert White, and Chester Doles, I became friends with each one of them. When the 3 Klan leaders left the Klan and became friends of mine, that ended the Ku Klux Klan in the state of Maryland. Today, there is no more Ku Klux Klan in the state of Maryland. They've tried to revive it every now and then, but it immediately falls apart. Sometimes different Klan groups from Pennsylvania or Virginia, neighboring states, might come in and hold a rally to try to get a chapter started, but it's never taken off.
Have you ever gotten criticism from black folks? Or
of course, absolutely. Now, black people who are friends of mine, who know me, understand where I'm coming from. Some black people who have not heard me interviewed or who have not read my book, some of them jump to conclusions and prejudge me, just like the Klan. I've been called an Uncle Tom. I've been called an Oreo. I had one guy from an NAACP branch chew me up one side and down the other, saying, we've worked hard to get 10 steps forward. Here you are sitting down with the enemy having dinner, and you're putting us 20 steps back. I pull out my robes and hoods and say, look, this is what I've done to put a dent in racism. I've got robes and hoods hanging in my closet by people who've given up that belief because of my conversations of sitting down to dinner, and they gave it up. How many robes and hoods have you collected? And then they shut up.
Wow, that is remarkable. I completely understand why Taj wanted me to hear that one now, because that aligns so much with our whole philosophy at the Risk podcast. Some of our proudest moments have been when someone writes in, like, for example, someone wrote in a couple of years ago to say that he was high up in a neo-Nazi organization in Europe and started listening to Risk, and it changed him. People in the States have written that to us as well. That whole thing of just showing up and listening and leaving a little bit of space to feel the empathy of where someone else is coming from. In fact, there was a fella in the Detroit area that wrote a very similar thing to us. And I came to do a Risk Live show there in Detroit, and he approached me after the show, and from his looks, I felt like, oh gosh, he kind of looks like a Proud Boy. He kind of looks like a MAGA person. Is this person going to come up to me and say something, rude or something like that? And I was just kind of prejudging. And he opened up his arms to give me a hug, and he was like, I was the guy who wrote you that email a couple of weeks ago that you changed my life. And it was just such a wonderful hug, because of all that. But anyway, okay, so I'll have more to say after the break. We're going to be right back. But man, what a beautiful and remarkable story there.
We'll be right back. We're back.
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that occurred to me as I was listening was I was thinking, oh, I've heard this story before. And then I remembered it was on something like CNN, right? But what a huge difference it makes to just allow the person with the lived experience to take their time and to focus on their voice. Daryl has such a beautiful voice with so much character in it. And when you are just listening, when you're focusing that way on a voice, it's a more open and active kind of listening, so that you almost can't help but start to feel more and more empathy for that person, like to be able to kind of envision yourself in their shoes. And I just really I was so moved to be able to be like, oh, I know, I've heard of this guy before. I know this story, the broad outline of this. I've heard of the guy who got someone else's Klan robes and all that sort of thing. But really spending some quality time with a person while listening to their voice like that, what a difference that makes. In fact, now I really want to hear the complete unabridged version over on Love and Radio. We shaved it down, not me, but our producers shaved it down for me so that this would, fit in a Risk Reacts episode format. But goddamn, the bravery of Daryl Davis. There are so many moments, talk about a story that has so many plot points, so many twists, and so many suspense, There are so many moments where he could have just, stepped off, where he could have all right, I've done enough for today. But he just kept with it. And wow, it's just, it kind of makes you think about your own experiences around prejudices and interacting with people you don't know that well. And there have been stories like this on Risk before where people have talked about, oh, I could have done this. I wish I had done that in relation to bigotry and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that it's just so important to remember that with these colossal problems we're facing in society, not just in the United States, but everywhere, but let's face it, very, very, very pointedly in the United States right now, that you can think outside the box because change comes one person at a time, we've noticed just in the marketing of Risk and all that sort of thing that, oh my gosh, you can put so much energy into trying to get the attention of people in the short attention span out there on the internet and yada, yada. Whereas when a person says to another person, holy shit, dude, this story means so much to me, give it a listen. Just like Taj did with me in this instance, then that is worth so much more than any of the, posting and effort you put into marketing, because it's people sharing time together and listening to one another. So you got to think outside the box. We're so locked into our ideologies and our preconceptions about why people are the way they are, or I'm not like you, and all that sort of thing, that I think ultimately it's so hard because it really has to come down to one-on-one or group by group, people creating a little bit more space for at least showing respect toward one another as human beings, being able to at least make space for listening to one another. And I'll tell you, nothing would make me more honored and happy than to feature more stories like this one on Risk. If anyone out there is listening and is like, oh, wow, yeah, that reminds me of something that happened to me once, please pitch that to us, that Jerry Lee Lewis example from the story was so funny, but it's a perfect example of, people learn things from different sources, from their school textbook or just a rumor they heard from a friend or misinformation online or whatever it might be. So sometimes having a conversation with someone and seeing that they're sincere and that they respect you, but, oh no, I think you should look into this, that, I mean, to someone like me, I'm a big music fan. Of course I know that Jerry Lee Lewis took the boogie woogie and all that from, but to someone else, like they can't help that they haven't been exposed to that information yet, but are going to be open to it and maybe be able to change from learning that, from just making a little space for listening to someone else. So, okay, thank you so much to Daryl Davis. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for allowing us to share your story here in this format. Like I said, I can't wait to listen to the whole one on Love and Radio. You can find Daryl Davis at daryldavis.com. And so much thanks to Nick Vanderkolk from Love and Radio for allowing us to do this as well, the producer of that show. Now, I have another message from Taj that he wanted me to play after listening to the story. So let's give a listen to this now.
Kevin, John said to call you and tell you what I love about Love and Radio. Love and Radio is maybe the best storytelling show. And I say that as someone who works for a storytelling show that I love. I love Risk, but I might recommend Love and Radio before I recommended Risk. I don't know. I just like it that much. And that's not a slight against you, Kevin. It's just how fucking good it is. So if you listen to Risk and you like storytelling shows, it would be a great disservice to yourself to not also be listening to Love and Radio. Love and Radio's stories are designed to expand your mind. They often cover like people who have occupations or hobbies that are unusual that you maybe have never heard of, and sort of highlight some feature of being a human that is extremely interesting and thought-provoking and deeply rich grounds for exploring the depths of depravity. Kevin, I know you haven't listened to their whole catalog, and don't yet, because I'm going to choose more of their stories for Risk Reacts, but I'll give you permission to listen when we're done pilfering their stories for this format we're doing. But hold off for now. Okay, bye.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much to Taj for pushing us to use this story, because it's just a beauty. And you can find the full version, like I said, of The Silver Dollar by Daryl Davis on Love and Radio at loveandradio.org. And thanks to all of you for listening along with me here as we continue giving this whole Risk Reacts experiment a try. Let us know what you think of this format. And if you've heard an amazing story that you think, oh my God, Kevin Allison has to hear this one, please let us know. I'm at kevin@risk-show.com. But don't spoil the story, right? Just say the title of the story, the name of the storyteller, and the name of the podcast it's from, okay? My producers can take things from there, but don't let me know what it's about. We're being so careful about that. Okay, you can find us on social media, including YouTube, at Risk Show. And always, we're at risk-show.com. Folks, today's the day. Take a risk.